Wow, guys, 2025 has not been one of those easy year fours. It's not like we hit new all-time highs right at the start of the year, and then the rest of the year, everybody was super happy because they were just sort of playing with house money. Instead, this has been a very different year four, and this month, October, has turned into Anxiety-tober. Let's talk about it. If your Halloween costume is going to be anxiety-ridden crypto bro, but you don't have to dress up at all, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I know it is for a lot of people in North America, at least, it is the night before the start of the week. But I thought there were a few things that have happened over the last few days that were probably worth addressing. Jay Marie, thank you for joining as always. Crunchy Cat, thank you for joining. Blue Mammal, good to see you. Crunchy Cat says, AOS, I'm glad you're back, man. Feels like home. I moved my stake and DRep keys out to Crypto Crow like a month or two ago, but might just have to come back home. Hey, as long as you are delegating to somebody who's actually in Cardano, that's a good thing. I think it's great. I think it's great. Jesse D, thank you. Hey, even if you can't listen, I appreciate the support, and the videos will always be here. So if you can't listen right now, I appreciate you jumping on, and maybe you can listen later. Daniil, thanks for joining. Ben Ryan, let's go. Gabe Carr Harris, thank you. Thank you for joining. So today I thought we would talk about how much this whole cycle, whether you believe we're still even in a cycle, how much this has turned into this like anxiety-ridden, nail-biting cycle for a lot of people. I know most people on this channel are a little bit more, they're a little bit more like me. They're a little bit less worried probably about what's going to happen than I think the average crypto person. And I think that's good. I think people on this channel are probably a lot lower anxiety. But I thought now was a good time to sort of look at, sort of two sort of contrasting indicators of the future. I think one probably represents sort of the great hopes in crypto, and the other is like this very pragmatic, realist kind of take on what's happening from a pretty surprising source. I think many people in crypto will see who this is going to be and be very surprised that this person is even showing up on this channel in anything but a mode where we're just making fun of them, basically. Slackline 95, thank you for joining. Seth, thanks for being here. Ben Ryan says, Anxiety-tober, unless you are holding strike. Love the project because it performs best in volatile markets. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's got their favorite projects right now, and it's probably helpful. It's probably helpful because I think a lot of crypto is deep in the anxiety. So before we jump into this, though, a little bit of housekeeping, and not to do with this channel, actually. I think we need to talk about this real quick because people were asking about this last week. Last week, people were asking how much time is left for the Glacier drop to claim your night tokens in the Glacier drop. Well, it turns out you've got only hours left at this point. You've got hours left at this point. Tomorrow, depending on what time zone you're in, tomorrow it's all over. You can no longer claim under the Glacier drop. So if you have any plans whatsoever of claiming your night tokens, now is the time. Do not delay any longer. Just do it now. Just do it now. There's lots of videos out there about how to do it. I discussed it quite a bit on Twitter, on X. So you can find lots of information about how to do it, but just do it now. Do not wait. Tomorrow is the end. So what happens next? I thought this timeline was a little bit helpful. This is from the Midnight Tokenomics paper, and we won't go into a lot of detail here, but I thought it might be nice for people to see this because a lot of people were saying conflicting things on X today about what's going to happen next. So here's the timeline as it was laid out in that tokenomics paper. If you've seen something more recent, if they've revised this, they certainly have. This is the version of the tokenomics paper which is available on the Midnight website. So they certainly haven't revised this. If they've put out something else that changes this, feel free to let me know. I haven't seen anything like that. So we all know the snapshot happened. Minting apparently happened. And then the glacier drop started. The glacier drop was scheduled for 60 days. That ends tomorrow. What happens next? So according to this timeline, it is the 30-day scavenger mine. You've probably read a little bit about this. There are going to be some kind of puzzles that require compute. And, it's designed so that the general public can do this. It's not just a bunch of guys with mining rigs who are going to dominate this, at least according to the design. My experience is the guys with the mining rigs always figure out how to exploit everything that involves compute. So, but I'm taking this to mean, like the same ASICs that dominate Bitcoin mining. This is not designed in that direction. So hopefully it turns out these puzzles are something that everybody can participate in. One question, actually, we'll come back to the question. After that, after the scavenger mine, then we'll actually have the launch of Midnight Mainnet. The Genesis block of Midnight will launch. Then there will be the actual redemption period. There will be this thawing period where we'll have sort of these 4 unlocks of 25% of our tokens, according to this tokenomics white paper. Then there's like a grace period, a final 90-day period for redemptions through the night claim portal before it sunsets. And then there's this 4-year lost and found period. So what I saw today, I saw some confusion. I saw some people posting on X that they thought this redemption period was going to happen before the scavenger mine. But I think what they really meant was that the redemption period had to happen before the lost and found period. So a little bit of confusion. Another question that I saw posted today was, does the scavenger mine happen immediately as soon as the glacier drop period has elapsed? Like immediately tomorrow, does the scavenger mine launch? I haven't seen instructions about the scavenger mine yet, so I don't know the answer to that question. If anybody out there knows the answer to that question, please post it. But at some point here, the scavenger mine is going to start, then Genesis block, then the redemption period. And of course, this redemption period, thaw, will be the period that people will be very interested in. So just a little housekeeping there to make sure people know that's coming, because people were asking about that last week. Now we'll jump in to the actual topic we're going to discuss tonight. So CrunchyCat says, Crow interview convinced me on how Midnight should revamp Cardano's interest. Claimed a while back, but let's go. Good for you. I hope everybody watching right now has already claimed. If you have not, stop watching this video right now. Just go claim. Don't fall for any kind of a scam. Make sure you are very careful and you're only signing transactions that are doing what you intend them to do. So look at what the transaction is actually doing when you sign it, all that kind of stuff. Use the Midnight official links, go to their X account, something like that, go to their website. But Giga Moonboy says, got my claim today. Let's go. Good job. Okay, let's jump directly into the topic at hand. And you're about to see a face that I think no one in Cardano calls a friend. And we have belittled because of his Luna tattoo. This is Novogratz. So we know Novogratz famously got a picture of like, what was it, a wolf howling at the moon. He was such a Luna guy. And of course, that was like he revealed that on X shortly before Luna crashed. But I think I like to keep an open mind and take information from anyone, even if someone is my enemy, not saying he's my enemy, but even if someone were my mortal enemy and they said something useful to me, I would take that. I would take that and incorporate that if it was useful. I will take information from anywhere, especially if someone is kind of this TradFi institutional insider. There's this walled garden, we generically often refer to it as Wall Street, this whole walled garden that is TradFi. And these guys who've been a part of it, these, guys like Goldman alums, like Raoul Pal, these guys who are part TradFi. They were cogs in that whole machine. They have some insights into the TradFi perspective on crypto that I think can be valuable. So I would not call Raoul Pal, or certainly not Novogratz. I think we all know, he famously referred to Cardano, or he described Cardano by saying, I don't know what Charles Hoskinson is doing over there. It's like some kind of a cult or something. I'm paraphrasing, but I believe that's what he said. Anyways, no friend of ours, Raoul Pal, not a Cardano lover in any way, but I think they have some interesting insights. And Novogratz revealed something that I thought was very insightful. So again, I won't bury the lead here. So Novogratz said they were talking about what happened. So the topic of this discussion between Raoul Pal and Novogratz was basically what on earth is going on in the crypto markets. And Novogratz, they discussed something very interesting. Novogratz said, well, we sold 9 billion ourselves for one client. That's 9 billion with a B. One client of theirs sold 9 billion worth of crypto. I took this to mean probably Bitcoin, or a lot of Bitcoin, maybe a little Ethereum. I was guessing he was talking about Bitcoin. I don't think he specifically said, but 9 billion worth of crypto. He said longtime holders and miners are trimming. That's the only supply we're seeing. So he's not saying it's like retail. It's not retail that he saw selling a lot. It was 9 billion out of this one client, at least that he saw with his firm, Galaxy Digital. So Raoul Pal tried to offer, oh, well, when you guys sold the 9 billion, it didn't even move the markets. And Novogratz responded, yeah, but that 9 billion swallowed all that treasury company buying. Without that 9 billion, it probably would have gone significantly higher. I'm paraphrasing here, but this is basically what I took away from that. So think about that. This is one guy, one sort of ex-TradFi guy, now turned into sort of a crypto guy, but Luna thing, not a huge success for him. But he had one client sell 9 billion. It's like, how many times do you think surprising things like this have happened in the last month, sort of on the fringes of crypto, on these nexuses between crypto and TradFi? This is just one story, but this guy right here had a client sell 9 billion worth of crypto. So we like to think, a lot of things get blamed on the centralized exchanges, and certainly there are some details about what happened in the last couple of weeks that can be traced to a certain centralized exchange. But also there's a lot of stuff like this going on. Like, I would have never heard about this if he hadn't done this interview and talked about it. How many guys like him are doing things like that for their clients and not talking about it? There's a lot of this kind of stuff going on. So he also said something pretty interesting about DeFi. This is something that is really common sense, but it was kind of good to hear somebody in the TradFi world confirm this. He said DeFi is a huge threat to TradFi because the regulation is going to have to be so different. DeFi can't do the KYC stuff on the front end. You already know that. KYC is know your customer. Traditional finance institutions have to do this huge amount of KYCing of their customers. They can't just give financial products to random people because they might be terrorists, they might be drug dealers, they might be money launderers, all those kind of things. So they spend a lot of money. Big financial institutions spend a lot of money KYCing their customers. They have to have AML professionals, anti-money laundering professionals. They have to keep people on staff who just keep a lookout for AML stuff, and the basis of their identification of all that, incorporates all the KYC stuff they have to do their customers. DeFi can't do that. DeFi has no way, DeFi platforms have no way of KYCing their customers on the front end. They can only try to catch the bad guys later. So DeFi can try to catch bad guys later. Obviously, if it becomes obvious that someone is a terrorist, the DeFi platform, if it can, if it's not permissionless, regulators are going to say, if you find out somebody's a terrorist, you should not serve them. So even a lot of people in crypto would argue that a DeFi platform should be permissionless, so there should be no way for them to do that. But let's assume they can do that. Certainly, regulators are going to hope they can do that. If that's the case, it's a much easier burden for the DeFi platforms. Catching somebody later is much easier than screening everybody up front. And according to Novogratz here, TradFi doesn't think that's fair. Why doesn't DeFi have to KYC their customers up front? So this is a really big problem for crypto, because what we do know is all those TradFi institutions are going to call their pet Congress people and they're going to complain about this. And unfortunately, they've got a good point. why does TradFi have to KYC all their customers up front when DeFi obviously is not going to do that? If DeFi is going to exist in the form we know it as today, they're not going to be KYCing their customers up front. I mean, there's midnight, so maybe there's hope for that. But a guy like Novogratz probably doesn't even know midnight exists. So he makes a very good point about how TradFi is going to react if DeFi is fully embraced the way this current administration seems is going to do. Here's something interesting about his opinion on the market structure bill. So the market structure bill, this is the Clarity Act. In the House, we called it the Clarity Act. In the Senate, they're calling it the market structure bill. Eventually, there'll be some kind of a reconciliation between those two, and we'll get some kind of a bill out of it. We're all hoping for something like October, but obviously we had the government shutdown, and the Democratic senators put forward their own version of the market structure bill, which meant that compromise was probably a little further off. So here's what Novogratz thinks about the content of the bill we eventually get, and more importantly for us, probably the timing. Novogratz thinks the market structure bill is largely going to be some flavor of the following. Number one, do the insiders have less than 20% of the token? And number two, things like, are the code repos going to be open source? Various other indicia of decentralization like that. And I think he's probably right. I think those are probably the big common threads in all these kinds of bills. Like, it's obvious the theme is, if you're decentralized, you can be a commodity. If you're centralized, you have to be a security, and everybody in the crypto world is going to want to be a commodity and not be under the SEC, basically. So it seems like 20% is that number that they've consistently hit. Probably that's because it's around the same amount as blockchains like Ethereum, and conveniently Cardano insiders also took less than 20% in the initial ICO. You know the story about the ICO. It all happened in Asia, mainly in Japan, but luckily they weren't greedy pigs, the founding entities. They took less than 20%. If you're around Cardano in the early days, we used to often parade out this chart that had basically every large blockchain, and it was like us and Ethereum and one other blockchain that were under 20%. Everybody else, the insiders, took way more than 20%. So I haven't seen an updated version of that chart, for like October 2025, but a lot of name brand, big market cap blockchains, the insiders probably still have more than 20%. This is a huge problem for them. And then you've got things like, the example he actually cited were, are the code repos open source? This is another big problem for a lot of blockchains, because they've treated, sort of the architecture of their blockchains, some of them, as sort of like trade secrets. And he thinks these are going to be the big questions that are asked in this determination. Is your blockchain ecosystem decentralized enough to be treated as a commodity? We've talked about this many times on this channel, but Charles and IOG were certainly genius in certain ways. And one of those things they were very, very smart about was architecting the blockchain in a way that would match these kind of regulations. Cardano is going to be fine on all this. Will other blockchains? Some of them will not. They will have to struggle to become commodities. When Cardano, we're going to be there. We've even got governance. They can't even claim that IOG is running things anymore. They burned the keys. IOG burned the keys. It's all on us, the community, which is a lot of drama, but it's the big thrust of all that is to match these regulations. So I think we're in good shape on this. Timing wise, he thinks we get the market structure bill in mid to late November. I think that's reasonable at this point. Maybe it's even optimistic. At this point, maybe it's optimistic. which is part of why we've ended up with Anxiety-tober instead of Uptober or Pumptober, as people were hoping for last month. It's because we were all hoping to get the market structure bill and reconciliation with the Clarity Act that was already passed in the House this month, along with the interest rate cut last month, interest rate cut this month, interest rate cut in December. Everybody was thinking this is like the perfect, conjunction of all the things we're looking for. And it's Q4 of year 4 of the 4-year cycle. Perfect. And instead, we did get the cut, in September. And, odds are very, very heavily we're going to get the cut this month and in December. But we did not get the market structure bill like we were hoping. Instead, we got threats of a trade war with China. We got a government shutdown. We got all kinds of problems. So that's sort of one take on what could happen for the rest of the year. You've got an ex-TradFi guy saying, yeah, one of my clients sold 9 billion worth. Not exactly what you want to hear when you're in crypto. And we know stuff like that must have happened, but it's not the kind of stuff you want to see happen. Here's the other side of that spectrum. Here's the other side of it. Here we have a post that is making the rounds, especially this weekend. I saw a lot of people reposting this. So back on October 1st, this account, Ash Crypto, you're probably familiar with it. He has 2 million followers. So a big crypto account. You can tell by the way he describes himself. News, memes, charts, hopium. If you see charts in hopium, you know exactly what kind of account this is. They're very popular in crypto. Like, the way I've always described this, this is the way to push the dopamine buttons of a crypto audience. Charts, hopium, Fibonacci's, Ichimoku clouds. This is what you do if you want to build a 2 million follower account on X in crypto. So he did say something he got a lot of attention. And I want to preface this by saying, I don't think anyone can really predict these markets. However, there are so many people randomly predicting the crypto markets. Somebody's always going to get right. So today, somebody's going to get it right. Today, this was the person who was ponied out as the person who got it right. And to some extent, he did. He was the lucky hopium dopamine button pusher who hit the button, and his guess this time turned out to be pretty close to reality. He says, my October prediction, and remember, this was October 1st. I think we are seeing a pump to make everyone believe Pumptober is real. And soon we can get a nasty drop where Bitcoin dumps closer to the 106K level and ETH dumps near 3,800 or lower. And actually, if you look at the close prices on those days, he was pretty close. He was pretty close on the close prices on those days. Obviously, the wicks on those candles went a lot lower, but the close prices were pretty close to what he said. And everyone will think October is canceled. And here's why everybody loves this. Here comes the hopium part. This will happen to liquidate all the bulls and mainly retail. This phase will happen until mid-October, the 20th max. The 20th will be tomorrow in North America. When everyone is bearish, people think Pumptober is canceled. Shorts pile up and bears are confident. That's when the market will bounce and start getting Q4 parabolic candles, likely toward the last 10 days of October. There's the hopium. There's the dopamine. He's pushing that dopamine button rapidly, rapid fire on the dopamine buttons. Then October monthly will close with a massive percentage gain, and the Q4 parabolic pump will start, which will send BTC to 150, 180K, ETH to 8 to 12K, and the true altcoin season will finally begin, sending alts 10x to 50x in just 3 months. See how he covers everybody there. He covers Bitcoin, Ethereum, and alts, the rest of the alts, 10x to 50x in just 3 months. And then he caveats it like they always do. I can be wrong, and we keep pumping from here. I'm 85% in the market, so I want to pump from here, but the market always does the opposite, so I'm holding 15% cash. If it goes up, my 85% will be profit. If it goes down, I'll buy the dip with the 15. So he's like caveated it both ways. It could actually be either up or down or sideways like they always do. To win in this market, you need to plan for both sides. So he posted this, and obviously his prediction, pretty closely matched reality. He was just the guy who happened to match reality pretty well in October. And so, of course, everybody started posting his previous posts. So he posted this one, and this one was October 17th. So Friday, roundabouts Friday, he posted this. So we are witnessing the phase 2 where everyone believes Pumptober is canceled and top is in. I have even seen people calling for BTC crash to 80K. This is exactly how cartels want everyone to think. I especially love this type of post where they give you the hopium, hit those dopamine buttons in your brain, and then they also hit the conspiracy theory stuff. It's the cartels. And, he's obviously saying, cartels as in groups of people who are somehow like, manipulating the markets, not cartels like drug cartels. After a crash like Friday, the market always comes down one more time to liquidate all those people who longed for the crash. So that's why we saw 1.2 billion liquidations in the last 24 hours. All the current negative arguments are actually bullish. Okay, hopium buttons being depressed. Banking crisis equals bullish. Plus Fed might start QE. China-US trade war already happened, and next will be a bullish post from Trump saying US-China agreed to a deal. I mean, I think that's kind of inevitable. It's like Trump posts one thing, trade war with China. The next day, it's like China's great, no trade war. In fact, we love them. Xi Jinping and I are going to have a love child, something like that. Weakness in job data, bullish for rate cuts. The bullish elements. Now he's going to hit you with a list of the bullish elements. Leverage flush plus crypto reset done. 2 more rate cuts in 2025. Fed about to end QT. Q4 is historically the most bullish season. Gold topping, money rotation to BTC. More wars ending. So he's not leaving. He can't leave. He's already all in. So, I mean, this is exactly, it's like, you didn't even have to tell me what was in this post. I could have, just based on what we see every single cycle, if you've been around for a while, if you've been around crypto for a while, you could have guessed everything they're going to hit. The money rotation to BTC, there are a bunch of people talking, a bunch of, like hopium guys talking about that on YouTube this weekend. So this is sort of the other end. This is the other end of the spectrum. Meanwhile, we also have things like this going on. Create the Imaginable says, I heard some dude lost 19 million in crypto because of leverage DeFi. Yeah, I mean, I would guess there are many people who lost more than that because of excessive leverage and just, kind of like gambling addiction kind of activities. Like, I think we will never hear about the biggest losses from the most notable people, but there was a lot of, the only conclusion I can come to is there was a lot of leverage in the system. Like there always is. It's Q4 of year 4 of the crypto cycle. There's going to be a lot of people using a lot more leverage than they should, and there are always going to be liquidations. Like this kind of thing always happens. Like the reason why I've always said, don't jump in any lobster traps is because they're so tempting on the front end. Like leverage is a type of lobster trap. It's a lobster trap because if you get liquidated, you lose all your little ADA lobster ducats, right? It's like you send them in there. You're like, okay, ADA lobster ducats, go in there. It looks warm and cozy. That'll be a nice little cave for you to hang out in. Good things are going to happen. And then before you know it, you get liquidated. Your little lobsters are being raised up on the boat to end up in a boiling pot to make some kind of lobster dish in some restaurant. That's what leverage is. Leverage is a form of lobster trap. It's not just losing your ADA because you locked it in some platform that gets hacked. Leverage is also a form of lobster trap. That's why people who've been around crypto for a while, you seldom hear them suggesting use leverage. In fact, they're usually screaming, do not use leverage. Even some of the more well-known crypto guys who do a little trading, the ones who have social media presences, they might even say, okay, I use a little leverage here and there, but you shouldn't do it. And you should read that as you shouldn't do it. Leverage is a form of lobster trap. This is also good advice. Don't sell your house. Great advice. Great advice. Do not sell your house. So David Love says, I assume that's a reference to the lobster dishes. I also think they're delicious. I just don't want them made out of my Ada because my Ada fell into a lobster trap. So this like sort of strain of hopium also feeds on these kinds of clips. So this is Tom Lee, and he basically says, like, hey, I'm still super bullish. I think Bitcoin is going to like 200 to 250K in the next 75 days. What you should understand when you see stuff like this is that there will always be somebody saying Bitcoin's going to go to blank level in the next blank days. Every single part of the cycle, there will be somebody saying this, and you'll get notable people saying it in Q4 of year 4 of the cycle. And Tom Lee is not a stupid guy, but he could be right or he could be wrong. He's just another guy out there pushing the hopium buttons, and that's probably, I don't have any reason to believe that that's not his actual legitimate belief as to what's going to happen. He seems to be a pretty earnest guy, but he's just another guy. And this is sort of all just like appeal to authority. The people posting the Ash Crypto post that I just showed you, they post the first one to establish the legitimacy of the authority, Ash Crypto. Then they post the next one, and it's sort of like appeal to authority. I've already shown you why he's an authority. He was right on October 1st. So you should believe he's going to be right again. But at the end of the day, these guys are all just guys, and they might really believe what they're saying, but they're just making guesses about this organic beast that can't be predicted. So I think Corny G has a good point. Don't be BitBoy. I agree. I think that's good advice for anybody. Anybody should not become a BitBoy. But these markets are really pretty unpredictable. If you didn't believe that before this month, it's like, how many people were telling you we are absolutely going to see this gigantic flash crash? How many people, like the day before the flash crash, were like, hey, we're going to have this gigantic flash crash, sell everything? Granted, there are some people out there telling you to sell everything every single day in crypto. There are doomers everywhere in crypto, always. But very few people were out there the day before the crash who aren't in that doomer category telling you, it's going to be doom every single day. Very few people like that who were saying, hey, we're going to have a giant flash crash. You should get out. And that was probably the most notable thing that's going to happen in all of October. So if nobody was able to predict that, why would you believe anybody can predict anything in crypto? It's like this wild beast in a cage at a zoo. And it's like, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, it's October. The zookeepers just gave it, a pumpkin. Is it going to bite the pumpkin? Is it going to hit the pumpkin with its claw? Is it going to go jump in the water instead? Is it going to go, scratch the tree? Is it going to, growl at us humans, across the giant crevasse thing that they use to keep it in its cage? Nobody knows. It's like that animal in the zoo. You don't know. I mean, sure, a zookeeper, who's watched it a million times might be able to guess like, oh, I think he's going to go for the pumpkin. Somebody really acquainted with the beast in the zoo, but that zookeeper is wrong often too. The beast might go over to the tree instead. This is exactly how crypto markets are. So the zookeeper is going to be right every once in a while, but he's also going to be wrong sometimes. This is something I think we can predict with some level of regularity and not be wrong about. And that's that certain blockchains have been engineered. Okay, one big one was originally engineered. It was architected to become the robbery forest. That's Ethereum. However, we also see other blockchains becoming what I'm going to call the ERF, the extended robbery forest. Ethereum is the robbery forest. It's probably going to hold that title forever, but Solana is definitely a part of the extended robbery forest world. We're EUTXO, they're ERF. So here's a post from It's Dave Ada saying, in the past 24 hours, 37 attackers on Solana have executed sandwich attacks against 1,518 victims, extracting an estimated 997 SOL. These attacks occur every few minutes, quietly draining value from ordinary users in a blockchain that increasingly rewards bots over traders. Users aren't trading, they're being traded against. And it gets worse. In the past 30 days, just 134 attackers have extracted 189,400 from Solana users through sandwich attacks. So I think it's there's sort of a conscious choice. You know, prior to 2025, you could have architected blockchains to allow for things like this. You know, I mean, we can't say we know we can't say it can't be done on Cardano because it has been done on Cardano in these certain niche circumstances, which we've talked about on this channel before. But certain blockchains are fertile ground for this kind of stuff. The robbery forest is fertile ground for this kind of stuff. There's a reason all the guys doing this go to the robbery forest, but they've also figured out the robbery forest is not alone. There's also the extended robbery forest, and apparently Solana is very much part of that, according to this post. Vincent 2 2099 says, almost lost all my ADA at 33 cents on the last flash crash. So glad I closed my months-long 2x position, thinking risky, even at a 2x. Yeah, any kind of leverage. I mean, you can get liquidated. The point of leverage positions is that you can get liquidated. It's horrible. I think the exchanges should place limits on leverage. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I remember last time I used leverage was probably, I'm going to get it's so long ago now, I'm going to get the year wrong, but it might have been like 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere probably more like 14, 15. I think it was on, I can't remember which platform, possibly Bitfinex, and I got liquidated for a very small amount. But I think even at that time, I want to say, I could be wrong about this, but I want to say Bitfinex had 100x leverage even back in those days. And even in those days, without having been through, I'd only been through like one cycle, none of us really knew that much about what crypto was going to become. Even then, I was like, you're going to give me 100x leverage? There is a downside here. Even without having seen all the horror stories that I would see over the following decade, just knowing that they were going to give me 100x leverage, I was like, wait a second, is that going to make it like exponentially easier for you guys to liquidate me and take all my money? Is that what that means? And I got liquidated for a very, very small amount. I think, in the early days when I used leverage, and a very small amount. Like I just felt stupid more than it was any kind of actual, economic damage to me. I just felt like I had lost the game that day, which I had because I'd used leverage, and I haven't used leverage since. So it's been a good decade. And I gotta admit, after a decade of abstaining from that, I do not regret it. At no point have I been like, man, I really wish I would have been using leverage the last decade, because I'm pretty sure I would have no crypto if I had done that. Forerunner 93 has some chart views for you here. And I think that's really the point I'm trying to get across today. You're going to find people making very persuasive arguments, very valid arguments that it's all over. It's all over. We should all get out of here. It's like close up shop. It's over. Come back in 2029. There are going to be very persuasive arguments made in that direction. There are also the other arguments in the other direction, that it's not over. This is just normal volatility. There are always shakeouts. We're still on the way up. And the horrible part is that there's no way to know who's correct. There's no way to know who's actually telling the truth. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Yeah, I mean, I think letting regular members of retail use 100x, I think that's things like that. I'll say things like that are ripe for for being curbed by regulators. This is the kind of stuff that regulators hate. They see stuff like that and they're immediately like the first thing they think about is like, we should get rid of that. And, it's hard to make a counter argument. It's hard to say that you should, be allowing like, 15-year-olds to use 100x leverage. You know what I mean? We all know it's happening. We all know that happens. So I'm not saying, I'm not saying big Western exchanges or people are doing that on big Western exchanges. Maybe they are too, but definitely in some of the more fringe exchanges, that's happening. There are like probably 14 and 15-year-olds using 100x leverage every night. Yeah, there's probably nothing they can do about that. But the regulated exchanges, that's probably not a thing that will be happening. Cardano Shepherd, glad to be back, man. Very glad to be back. Yeah, it's super crazy. The leverage is akin to my friends who love to go to the casino. I don't have a lot of friends who love to go to casinos, but I do have some acquaintances, and we all know they love to gamble. They love to gamble. That is their vice. And these are otherwise very normal people, very nice people. I like them, but all of us who know them know that is their vice. And using very, very large leverage is pretty much the same chemistry going on in your brain. The same people I know who love to go to casinos, if I taught them about crypto, which I've intentionally never done, but if I taught them about crypto and showed them how leverage works on crypto exchanges, they would immediately stop going to those casinos and just do that on their laptops at home. It's like the best casino ever. The best casino ever. And I think that's probably true for the vast majority of people who like to go to casinos. True, you don't get free drinks necessarily when you're at home on your laptop. You probably don't get free drinks, but it's a lot more convenient. Just throw open your laptop and get that same brain chemistry, which is really what you're after. So it's we didn't have a huge amount, I think, of news over the weekend, which lately I would call a good thing. Lately, if there's no news, I'm kind of happy because I think we all knew we weren't going to get any great news after that giant flash crash. After that drawdown, it's like we could only like the only thing we could hope for was the absence of bad news, I think. Cardano Universe says, I have always believed that the portfolio should remain stable most of the time. A growing portfolio is what excites people to invest. Need regulation here. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm sort of two minds. Like, I think the reality is that some of the craziness of crypto is going to get curbed, of course. Should it? Like, I see the horror stories when people lose their entire portfolio because they got liquidated, and I feel very bad for those people. And for those people, I wish leverage had never been available to them. But at the same time, part of me is like, hey, freedom, does the screaming eagle need a regulator to tell him when he's eaten enough, rabbits or whatever? Like, it's not good for him to eat too many rabbits, probably, but he doesn't need a regulator. Freedom, you know what I mean? So I'm of two minds. I think there's the regulation would be helpful for the people who, the same people who are addicted to gambling in casinos, and for the rest of us who don't really have a problem with that, I'm kind of like, give me freedom. So I think valid arguments can be made on both sides of that. So what else? Any other news from this weekend that everybody thinks we should discuss? I think it was actually a pretty quiet news weekend. I was kind of expecting more of a sort of social media blitz from the White House, to kind of prime the markets for tomorrow. Try to temper all the China trade war stuff. I expected more social media activity today. But I think the reason we didn't see that was because the big news over the weekend was Trump's discussions with Putin and Zelensky, which we won't get into. most of you know I have very strong feelings on that as well, but we won't get into that on in this video because we're not doing politics right now. Jay Marie doing recreational activities. Okay. Yeah, it's the beauty of crypto is it's decentralized and everybody can do what they wish. There is no regulator in crypto who is interested in what activities you're engaged in while you watch these types of videos. Okay, any other news items before we close it out? I'm thinking this week things are going to pick up. We're going to get closer to the FOMC meeting, and it's the anxiety is going to be building if we don't see some action soon. We're nowhere near where people expect to be at this point in year 4 of the cycle. If the cycle is continuing, this hasn't been one of those years where we get to new all-time highs sometime early in year 4, and then we're all just like playing with house money for the rest of the year, just kind of chilling. When I say playing with house money, for me that just means doing nothing because I don't actually play with it, I just keep it. But this hasn't been one of those years. We've had previous cycles where we hit all-time highs, early. I think last cycle in Cardano, didn't it happen? Last cycle, didn't it happen in like January for Cardano? Is that when we hit all-time highs last cycle? Let's look real quick. Let's take a peek. Just to emphasize how different this cycle is than last time. I'm going to try to do this without going to the trading view. I'm going to try to do this right in the CMC view here. We'll see if it'll load. But some lately, the way they've kind of revamped stuff to accommodate the trading view pop-up windows, it makes it a little bit difficult. But we'll see if we can do it. I think we hit. Okay, so this candle was our previous all-time high. So this was in the 2017 cycle, and this candle, we could break it down a little bit to make it a little more fine grained. But this candle, we had a high of 132, and then this candle right here, this is the January candle. Yeah, that's the January candle. The next one's the February candle. So in this January candle, we hit 147. So think about that. In January of year 4 in the last cycle, we had already hit an all-time high. Granted, it was only the second cycle for Cardano. This was the cycle right after the ICO in Japan, and sort of the launch of Cardano was just prior to this. So, this is only the second cycle, but we hit all-time highs in January, and then the rest of the year, we were just chilling until November, and we got that you can't tell because these are just monthly candles, but it was before the Wyoming Cardano Summit when we saw all-time highs. So Noah Sanchez says August. What's the best casino DApp for ADA? That's a good question. I mean, it's definitely one of the DeFi dApps, right? I think you're just saying which dApp on Cardano is most like a casino, not like specifically what is like a casino game style dApp. It's definitely one of the DeFi dApps. I guess it probably just depends on what type of DeFi platform you like. This is interesting. November to February is my timeline. So I think a lot of people are adjusting their timelines out. So, again, I think there's valid arguments that could be right or wrong. Definitely feels like if we're going to see, actually, I won't even say that. I was about to say something that implied a belief one way or the other, but I think these markets are too unpredictable. The stuff going on is too wild. I don't even dare express an interest in it going one way or the other because this year's been so weird. Like I just pointed out, last time we were at all-time highs in January, and then we were just kind of like, oh wow, how much higher are we going to go? The rest of this is just kind of a big bonus, and we went all the way above $3. This time it's a Nailbiter, guys. It's October, and we just had a gigantic drawdown. Mission Zambia, thank you for joining. Good to see you. Mission Zambia says, good morning, AOS. A bit late today. Hope you're all well. Hope you're well as well. Hope things are going great in your neck of the woods. But I think this cycle is going to be, so far it's been quite a nail biter, because we haven't seen anything near our previous all-time highs, whereas last cycle we saw that in January. So this time, a lot of anxiety for a lot of people, I think. But it's one thing you can say about it: Q4 of year 4 this time has not been boring. It has not been a boring one at all. It's definitely a nail biter. Yeah, this is kind of like what that Ash crypto account was speculating. Maybe the big dump was to set up altcoins. I think you're saying to set up altcoins, like to set up altcoins for a run, possible, possible. That's kind of the Ash crypto thesis. I think a lot of people who are still hoping for, like a good finish to year 4. That's what they're hoping for. This cycle sucks for Cardano. It has so far. It sure has so far. No debating that. Midnight launch is so exciting. Partnership reveals. I'm looking forward to that. I hope we got some big partnerships. I hope we got some really big really big and meaningful. We can't just hope for big partnerships anymore. We have to hope for meaningful ones as well. So I hope we got that. Benny916 says, I jumped into Cardano just a little bit before the first stake pool started, August 2020. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, there were quite a few people around during the ITN. And a lot of people who joined sort of just after the ITN as actual stake pools, as the ITN stake pools sort of jumped over to become, like full on stake pools. So yeah, there were a lot of people around. But that's a good amount of time. It's now, we're talking about a half decade now, which is amazing. Seems like the ITN was just yesterday, but August 2020 was actually over half a decade ago, which is amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's again, this organic beast in the cage, it could decide to show us what we want to see for the rest of Q4. I think that's very possible. The people are saying, no, we're actually going to extend into 2026. The 4-year cycle is going to be a 5-year cycle this time, or 4 years and change. I think that's very possible. The catastrophic result that we don't get anything, I think that's also possible. Hopefully it's not that one. Hopefully it's either the strong Q4 we want, or it's, just an extension into 2026. But I think it's so unpredictable, no way to say anything. Okay, I think we've covered just about everything that was noteworthy from this weekend, but we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Hopefully we get good news every day now. I'm sort of crossing my fingers for good news. I think during, the other years in the crypto cycle, like specifically the years where we're just kind of in the doldrums, things going sideways, I'm not so anxious to see good news. I'm just like, crypto's going to do its thing, and we'll just talk about whatever it's actually doing. But Cardano volume has been 1.4 billion on the 24-hour. Yeah, the good thing about volatility, when people are scared or very excited, there's activity. So let's see. Beamer House's volume on Cardano Dex is also so disappointing, bigly. And that's one of the most discussed topics in Cardano. I've talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks. In terms of, not so much in terms of like possible solutions, but in terms of it just being this chicken and egg problem. It's like, people want to focus on the lack of a tier 1 stablecoin, but it's like, we can't get a tier 1 stablecoin, and people blame that on the lack of demand for the DeFi platforms. But part of the lack of demand on the DeFi platforms is blamed on the lack of a tier 1 stablecoin. So chicken and egg problem for sure. J. Marie, thanks for jumping on. Benny916, I think we are here. I think if we are here, we're pretty much already doing okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the bigger points before we sign off here. This is something I've said in the past, and this is the way I think about it, but there's a specific reason why people object to it too. So the way I think about it is, hey, during years two and years three, we were so low. What did we dip down to? All the way down to 24. Then we were in the 30s for a really long time, and then dipping back down. Then we get up into the 40s, and we were just happy to get over 50 again. And now we're clear up here in the 60s. Like, that's pretty great. But then you'll always have people pop in who say basically like, yeah, but I bought at $1. So I do feel for those people too. But at the same time, because I was buying back in 2018, I definitely feel super happy to see us in the 60s. Beamer House, so good to see you, and very glad to be back as well. I think I'm going to watch Blue Thunder tonight. Yeah, chilling. Okay, Robert Scott, 1571, RLUSD, Chainlink, USD1, Franklin Templeton, RWA, a few hopeful benefits of night. I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody else, I'm looking forward to everything. I'm looking forward to I hope we have some great partners on the Midnight Network. I hope the Glacier drop turns out great. I hope when they actually launch Midnight, there's a whole bunch of like launch partners. I think Midnight and Bitcoin DeFi are really the big things we've got going on right now. I don't know, since we were just talking about DeFi platforms, I don't know how long it would take us, even if we did exactly the right thing to get DeFi ramping up. I don't know how long that would take. I think the really big things that jump out to me right now are definitely Midnight and Bitcoin DeFi. Bitcoin DeFi is going to take a long time to build, but Midnight going to launch pretty soon. So fingers crossed, we have some great launch partners on the Midnight Network. The beautiful thing is we're all going to find out. Otherwise, I hope everybody had a great weekend, and we'll be back at it tomorrow night. Hopefully we get some great news. Hopefully great life-changing news tomorrow. We can talk about all of it tomorrow night. But either way, I'll see you then and talk to you soon.